everyone, I'm back. After the long Which and the Tata Steel tournament, now we are back in the new normal condition, which means online tournament. Yesterday, the infamous Opera Aurora Pit online tournament start. It's a leg in the famous Champion Chess Tour. It's a series of tournament which will last throughout the year. It is hosted by Magnus Carlsen and Chess24, his website. Day 1 of the Opera Aurora Pit features many interesting games. In fact, 24 over 40 games are decisive games. Today, I'll show you a nice game between Daniel Dubov play with Anish Giri, which end in a draw. The most spectacular thing about this game is that Dubov used the Scotch Gambit, our opening. Now, let's start. E4, E5, Bishop C4. Dubov used a different move order, but he will arrive there anyway. Bishop C4, Knight F6, D4. Here, if Knight D4, D takes, and white position looks very good. He have Queen F3 ideas. F7 is a weak spot. The knight is vulnerable to a Queen F3 too. Queen D5 might be a threat sometime. So white has easy development and easy advantage. So after D4, E takes is forced. Knight F3 here. Knight E4 and Queen D4 transpose to the Urusov Gambit, a very interesting and unexplored gambit. But Jerry declined his chance to go into this gambit and he chose Knight C6. Probably you realize that we are getting into the territory of the Knight F6 variation of the Scotch Gambit. And you can check my video on this topic. I think I made it 3 weeks ago. A video about everything you need to confidently play the Scotch Gambit. I highly recommend you to check it out. Here, castle. Knight D4, he grabs the offer. If not, then we'll play Knight D4 with simple development, and we're not even a pawn down. If you want to refute a gambit, I think accept it is the only way. So, let's take Rook E1, D5. If you have checked out my video about the Scotch Gambit theory, you won't be surprised when you see this Bishop D5. Looks crazy, right? But thousands of games is played with this variation. The pawn is set after Queen D5, Knight C3. The D4 pawn is pinned, and the E4 knight is pinned too. If D takes C3, then Queen D5 decides the game. So here, black has many queen retreats. One is Queen A5, which is the old move. Here white went Knight E4, Bishop E6, Knight E to G5, castle, Knight E6, F takes, and Rook E6. The endgame are equal and dynamically balanced. Both sides has a pawn majority on their wings, but I slightly prefer white here due to his active rook, and the D4 pawn might be a weakness in an endgame. Apart from Queen A5, black has Queen to D7, which is an interesting move, which was recommended by Grandmaster Simon Williams in his course on Chessable. And Queen H5 is one of the modern moves which bring black total equality after some accurate play. But that's not the topic of today's lecture. And you can check that out again in the Scotch Gambit theory video. in this game, Anish Jiri chose queen d8. Not the strongest move, but it's quite logical too, and it should bring black equal position. Rook e4, bishop e7, knight d4. Here, castle is a normal move, but what if Jiri was ambitious with f5? Of course, the rook cannot come back, as the knight will be hanging. So the idea here might be, it's very aggressive, yeah, but with Dubov's creative and aggressive style, I believe he will win for this one. Bishop h6. Wow, the e4 pawn, the e4 rook was hanging, and Dubov, not Dubov, but we put a bishop and prize too. So crazy. But it have a logical point too. After g takes, queen h5, king f8, knight f5. We are winning with this rook on the unstoppable file. This rook is coming too. The queen will deliver mate on h6. This king is bare. So we have the decisive advantage here. Instead of g takes, he might also try f takes, but then we'll take this pawn. If he try to hold the rook with rook g8, then queen h5, king d7, queen d5. After king e8, queen g8 picks up the rook. After knight d4, the solid castle was played. Bishop f4 simply developed, and now Jiri played bishop f6 and transform the position into a static endgame. Knight c6, queen takes, rook takes, b takes, rook c4, targeting black's weakness, the c6 and c7 pawns. Bishop f5. Of course, Jiri has the bishop pair, which is usually an advantage, so he needs to open the position, and he's willing to sack a pawn to do so. Rook c6, bishop c2, rook d2, bishop f5, knight d5. As you see, the c7 pawn has dropped, but for it, black have gained tremendous compensation. Look at the bishop, they're pointing at the queen side. Also, the rook might go to b8 and target down the b file. So the position should be equal, but there are chances for both sides to outplay their opponent. Bishop d8, bishop c7. Yeah, now we are pawn up. Rook e8, h3. Of course, we need to make room for the king. If bishop d8, then rook e1 will be a checkmate. Sweet checkmate. After h3, bishop e6. Trying to exchange everything. Rook c3, bishop g5. f4. f4 to block the attack to the d2 rook. Bishop h4, g3, continue to chase the bishop. Bishop e7 and g4. Whilst aggressive, the threat is obviously f5, but g4 can also act as the space gaining move. After bishop h4, white has a minimal edge, but rook c8. Pinning the bishop was Jiri's choice. Dubov exchange rook, and bishop c5, king g2, f5. Jiri tried to open up the position, but as I said before, when you don't have the bishop pair, usually it's not a good idea to open up the position for your opponent's bishops. So g5 was the right move. King f7 and knight c7. I very much like this move because at once it hit the c5 bishop and also threatened to exchange the e6 bishop. So it's quite a multi-purpose move. Now black has quite a spectacular response too, but unfortunately for him it didn't bring equality. It is rook c7. It seems that black is stuck to the exchange, right? But after bishop takes c7, bishop b4, and wow, he takes it back. But even now, white remains some chance in this endgame. Also, this opposite color bishop, white's opponent, his bishop is slightly more active, and the g7 and h7 pawn might be future weakness. After rook e7, trying to defend, here Dubov start to grin like Magnus Carlsen. a5. Is that accurate? I am not so sure, as I am not a world-class player, but I didn't believe in this move because it puts the pawn into the square which our d4 bishop can target, and this change is irreversible. King g3, bishop b3. Oh, now both sides exchange the a pawn, but g7 and f5 still remains weaknesses. h4. Dubov want to make the most out of his position. h5, yes, break, and go with king h4. Now, Jeri's pawn structure was broken, therefore I think his position was starting to get worse and worse here. Bishop e6, king h5. The h7 and f5 pawn are very weak now. King h6, bishop g6. The bishop g6 is holding his position together. But c4, advancing our pass pawn. King f7, then c5. It looked like black has weaved a mating net around our king, so he played rook d1. If now we are careless and play something random like c6, of course you know it, swift checkmate. So instead of the careless c6 or any other random move, white played rook a7, king f8, and now rook a8, king f7, rook a7. Dubov want to repeat moves, maybe to gain some time on the clock. King f8, but now Dubov blundered the game. After such a brilliant game, Dubov could have wrapped it and forced Jiri to lose with the nice and spectacular rook h7. Why? Because after bishop takes h7, king takes h7, king f7, white has a nice blocking idea. What it is? 5 seconds to you to solve it. Easy but hard tactic. It is the blocking bishop g7. Bishop h6 is coming to block the rook on the h file, and therefore white is free to push with g6. In this case, the c pawn do a very good job of undermining the rook too. For example, here after rook h1, bishop h6, rook g1, we have the nice c6. The rook must return, after which the pawn push to roam. And we are winning. Probably with second left, Dubov didn't spot that and he went for the modest rook a1. After rook d2, he repeat moves and the game ended a draw. I was quite sad for the conclusion of the game. Dubov would have done better because the combination of bishop rook h7 followed by bishop g7 is very nice, and yeah, I regretted that such a genius like Dubov didn't finish the game with such a tactical shot. But anyway, this game was very nice, and in the future videos I'll analyze other rapid game at the Opera Euro Rapid Tournament 2, because as far as I can see, the game are very interesting and there are plenty of room for analysis. Thank you for watching. Bye bye!